Hey friend, welcome back to my garden. This is week 19 in the growing season, and I'm just going to give you a little quick walkthrough tour, and then I'm going to take you along with me while I harvest dinner. We've had a weird weather season so far. First we had tons and tons of rain, and right now we are currently experiencing really high temperatures into the 90s. So my garden has been struggling, but it looks like it's really starting to bounce back. It's been fertilized, and as you can see, the cucumbers are starting to trellis and put on flowers. And the cucamelons have recovered from their stressed out phase where they turned yellow and were kind of withering up, but now they're really starting to put off cucamelons, so I'm happy with that. You can see that my peppers actually bounced back too. I was pretty worried about these guys for a while. They were starting to turn yellow. They weren't really growing. But now we have peppers. These are hot banana peppers down here on the end. There are several on each plant. I think that I'll be using these to make pickled pepper rings when they're done and they've been harvested. And down on this end, you can see that my jalapenos are starting to put on little baby peppers, and the poblanos are mostly doing okay. There's one little plant down there that's struggling really hard. It may or may not make it, and that's okay. There's plenty of other pepper plants, so I'm not concerned about that one little guy. And if you'll remember back in February when I was starting on my plants, I was practically beside myself because I wasn't having any luck getting more than one tomatillo plant to start, and I just knew for sure I wasn't going to get any tomatillos this year, and it was such a bummer. And now if you look at this tomatillo plant and the two next to it, they are heavy with fruit. Um, I'll definitely have enough of this to make all the salsa verde I need and share some with my family. If all goes well, I may even just can some whole tomatillos. That way, if I run out of salsa verde uh, a little earlier than I would like to, I can just make some more and use the canned stuff. This is only my second year gardening, but tomatillos is definitely something that I will be growing from now on, I think. They do really well here, and I am very happy about that. Now, moving on down this bed, we see all of my chaos tomatoes. And I'm calling them chaos tomatoes because I never got around to trellising them, but they're big and they're strong, and I'm not really seeing any signs of disease, so I'm just going to leave them alone for now. If I start to notice that the leaves are turning or the plants are suffering, not getting enough airflow, I will go in and trim some of the lower branches. But these are determinate tomatoes. These are my Ruby Monster tomatoes. So I don't want to really prune too many branches off. I want to get as much fruit as possible off of these plants. And as you can see, they are all pretty heavy with fruit. Um, in fact, last week there was just a few tomatoes, and this week everywhere I moved branches on the plants, just clusters of tomatoes, which I think is just awesome. I spied a ripe Super Sweet 100 tomato in the back, so I will be picking that later. But check out how huge this Super Sweet 100 is. It has filled up the end of this bed and decided to overflow on the ground into the walkway. And there are just tons of clusters of cherry tomatoes all over this plant. Most of these clusters are at least as big as my hand, maybe a little bigger. So we're going to be heavy with cherry tomatoes this season, and I think that there are much worse problems to have than that because I love cherry tomatoes, especially right out of the garden. So I'm just going to let it keep doing its thing, and I'm just going to step over it. Here is some of the mammoth basil that I had planted. This plant got kind of sick and it struggled, and by the time it started to bounce back, it had started to bolt. So I just decided I was going to let that one go ahead and go to flower and feed the bees. It's beautiful. The flowers are lovely on basil if you've never seen them before. The rest of my flowers are kind of suffering in the heat. They're not doing very well. But for the most part, I did get some snapdragons, and that made me pretty happy. My little zucchini plants are finally starting to catch up with the rest of the garden. And my lettuce. I said in the last vlog I would be happy to just get enough lettuce to make a salad, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. It is going to be so hot that this is probably the only lettuce harvest I'm going to get off of this, but I tasted it on this day and it wasn't bitter yet, so I figured I better strike while the iron is hot. And here is my other mammoth basil plant. It's doing great. I think the little bit of shade that it's getting from the spoon tomato is helping. So I'm not going to fiddle with it. I'm going to leave it just like it is. You can see one of my spoon tomatoes. It succumbed to the disease that they all had when I planted them. But these two on the end down here are doing great. They bounced back after I pruned them with no problems. And I have a little crookneck squash. I'm so happy about that. Do have some garden maintenance that I need to do. We had a couple of storms that blew a bunch of tree branches down, and I have some plants that are kind of sickly that need to be cut out. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and harvest while I have you here with me in the garden, and I'll do the maintenance another day. So I'm going to start with the cucamelons. I didn't get a ton, but I did get a few. I'm getting, a handful about every day or every other day, which is not too shabby. From what I understand, they start off slow like this, and then they end up taking off, and you can almost hardly keep up with them. So at some point, I might get enough to go ahead and pickle them. But for now, we're just having these as little snacks. Some of them don't even make it in the house if I have kids in the garden with me when I'm harvesting. Um, but that's fine. That's what the garden's here for, just to feed my people. And it turns out everybody in my house likes a cucamelon, so that's awesome because everybody says I will have them from now on, whether I want them or not, as volunteers. So after I get all these cucamelons picked, I go ahead and I move on to grabbing what sugar snap peas I can find. This plant bounced back, but it bounced back just a little too late. Like I said, the temperatures have been really hot. The other one that I have planted across the garden, it's almost dead. It needs to be cut out. This one is doing okay. I'm getting a handful of sugar snap peas every other day or so. And I'm just going to keep picking them while I have them to pick because I know this plant is not going to make it too much longer in extended hot periods. And if you look at my green bean bed here, if you remember a couple vlogs ago, these plants were puny and yellow and sickly, and now I have green beans. And I'm really excited because in my mind, when you start picking green beans, that's when garden season is really in full swing because green beans have to be harvested about every other day. Um, and that means that I get to do one of my favorite things, and that's just like I said before, pull up a bucket and get, you know, my head stuck into this green bean bed and just start plucking green beans. I didn't get a ton on this day. I got a couple of really good handfuls. So, if you're growing green beans, even if there aren't a lot on your plants, you still really need to pick the ones that are ready so that your plant will keep making more green beans. And with as long as our summer here is, I will probably, when these guys stop growing, stop putting off green beans, I will probably be able to pull these out and start another flush if I want to. Um, because they grow really fast and they produce really fast. And, with our growing season, I might as well just take advantage of that. I'm going to be going on vacation for a week, my first vacation in about 6 years. So my garden is being left to the mercy of my adult children. None of them, well, that's not true. One of them has an interest in gardening, but she can be a little forgetful. So I'm going to leave them a schedule on when to water and when to check my plants. And everybody's going to get a quick crash lesson on when things are ready to harvest. So we'll see how that goes when I get back. I'm going to go ahead and harvest this squash too. It could be a little bit bigger, but I know things like this have a tendency to get a little crazy. You never want to say, oh, I'll pick that cucumber tomorrow. Oh, I'll pick that zucchini tomorrow. Oh, that squash will be okay. I'll get it tomorrow because you come back and the thing looks like a baseball bat. So I want to be able to eat it raw and fresh and not cooked. So picking it a little smaller is better in my opinion. I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple of these cherry tomatoes too while I'm down here. I'm going to get this red one. It's calling my name. And then there's a couple of them here that have started to turn. They're like slightly blushing, a little bit yellow. I go ahead and pick those two. I don't want the birds to come along and peck at them or a bug to come along and chew on it. So I'll just let those ripen in the house. And as always, I have to go through the little spoon tomato plant and pick off whatever's showing. These guys are just so cute. It's comical. They make a really great little snack though. I just pulled that whole cluster off of those. I'm just going to let the ones that are still yellow ripen, and I will eat the ones that are ready on my salad. And can't forget this little guy. No stragglers. So I'm going to move on to my lettuce. Since I'm not sure if this lettuce is going to last much longer in this heat, if it's just going to bolt or get bitter, I'm going to cut into this pretty heavily. I could have just harvested each individual little head of lettuce, but instead I just chopped it off above the root base. And if it grows a little more, fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too. I said if I only just get a single salad out of this lettuce, I would be happy, and I am happy. I will be trying lettuce again this fall when the temperatures are cooler so that hopefully I can get a lot more harvested off of it using this method right here, just the cut and come again method. In the cooler temperatures, the lettuce is far more likely to be sweet, kind of like the kale and stuff that I'm gonna grow again in the fall. But yeah, overall, I mean, hey, for not expecting to get any lettuce at all, this is not too shabby, and I'm gonna make a pretty killer salad out of this. But that's all I have for you this week, friends. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jen. I do cooking, canning, and food preservation videos every Tuesday, and I do garden vlogs every Friday. If you're into that sort of content, I hope that you'll consider subscribing and sticking around. We have a really great group of people here, and we would all love to have you. Until next time, friends, happy gardening.